Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's episode of Learn Live UAE. Tonight we are on our final episode of this mini-series focusing on edtech. Tonight we have a focus specifically on Google Schools. Just as a little aside, I just thought I would introduce a little bit of research from ISC Research, focusing specifically on the impact of COVID-19 on educational technology in international schools. And whilst this is not specific to the UAE, I think it's quite interesting to actually look at the uptake of the different learning platforms being used across schools across the globe. And as we can actually see, the vast majority of the schools within this particular study actually turned out to be Google Schools. So I'm really excited to pick up a few top tips tonight from our two guests. Tonight we welcome onto the show former guest Ben Rothwell. He can be found on Twitter at VHPS _assistant head. He leads all things digital and innovation at Victory Heights Primary School in Dubai, which is a Google reference school within the region. And also on the other side of the fence for once, the second week running actually, my good friend and absolute legend and co-founder of Learn Live UAE, Mr. Mark Anderson, who's a Google certified innovator, trainer and mentor. So I'm really keen to delve a little bit further into top tips for Google Schools. I know that many people like myself might work in a school that's not Google, but use Google for their own personal kind of work. So, I'm hoping to also pick up a few top tips myself tonight to improve my efficiency, effectiveness using Google products. A little shout out for us on the show, just in the coming week, we have a live session from the Guest EdTech Virtual Summit in Dubai. Our panel discussion is titled "Why Bother with EdTech?" And I think it's a great time to have that discussion. You can obviously book your place and find out more information at the web address in the bottom right-hand corner, www.guestleaders.com. I'm hugely excited to finally be able to announce who our panelists are for the Guest Summit. We welcome Nigel Davis, who's Deputy Head Teaching Learning and leads on digital strategy at the British school Al Kabairat. We also welcome Nathan Sadler, who is Primary Principal in a school in Dubai. It's a GEMS school. We also welcome a colleague of Ben's, Sasha Crabb, who's principal at Victory Heights Primary School in Dubai. And then our final panelist is Priya Lakhani, who is a CEO and founder of Century Tech. So a really broad and diverse panel that we've got for that discussion. So I'm really keen to hear what they have to say. But without further ado, let's welcome our first guest onto the show. I'm going to bring Ben in. Ben, hi, how are you?
Hi there, I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, I think we're all marching on, aren't we, towards the national holiday, but still smiling.
We are still smiling, yeah. Life's all about smiling.
Exactly. It's all about focusing on the little things that we can influence and just keep forging on for the children. That's the main thing, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Tell us a little bit before we kind of delve into your top tips then. Obviously, how did you get from adopting Google to then becoming a Google reference school?
Yeah, so I joined Victory Heights pretty much at its inception 8 years ago. And the network manager at the time had signed us up as a Google Suite school. And I'd come from a school in the UK as well that was a Google Suite school. And obviously it looked a fair bit different back 8 years ago, but we ran with it, and I was very happy with the collaboration tools and that it offers, Google. And I think at the time, although things like the Microsoft Suite and Apple as well have really improved on their connectivity and collaboration suite, at the time Google was sort of quite innovative, and there wasn't really anything that could touch it in terms of collaboration. And as a new school, having the ability for teachers to work on documents simultaneously was really beneficial for us. So we were really happy to carry on and run with that. And then our journey took us the following year to actually introduce Chromebooks into the school, and we felt we had a decision to make. There are a number of ways we could have gone. At the time, probably we could have gone iPad, or we could have stayed. We had desktop Windows-based PCs, but I at that point felt that Chromebooks offered a good bang for your buck for the school. They offered that portability, but they still offered some of the things like a keyboard and things that I felt, especially from my experience in secondary, were really important to our young learners at Victory Heights. And so we just to start with, we introduced 25 Chromebooks into the school, and then they were really successful. So obviously, when any other school sort of introduces a new sort of piece of tech or some software, you do have to pilot it. And although I had the belief that it would be successful, we started off small, and then we grew, and then we basically rolled it out one-to-one. And we started with year 6, and we've now got one-to-ones in the school through year 3 to 6, and around about 65% of our year 2s have Chromebooks as well. They've got an optional one-to-one, and probably even 10% of our year 1s. And that's come a long way since when we introduced it, and parents were reluctant to purchase devices for year 6 because they weren't sure that they would be able to handle them correctly, to now have sort of 5-year-olds coming in with their little laptop bags, and it's quite cute, but it's worked really well for us. So we pushed heavily to sort of introduce Chromebooks, and then I spoke at a number of events, and there was a Google Summit out here that I spoke at, and then we got contacted by Google in the region and said that what we were doing sort of qualifies us as a reference score, that we were active in promoting Google, but we also were using it to its full capability. And hopefully I can share a couple of small sort of tips with you today. I'm not going to change the world, I don't think, but I've got a couple of things that one site that I like to use, and also just some general tips around how you can get the most out of it.
I think that's a really important point there. That, it's about getting the basics right, that common language of learning, before you can then build on that level playing field, and then start to be a bit more innovative with it.
I think one of the reasons as well we went with Google is that at the time I believed, and I still do, and I think actually the world is moving more that way, that devices are just basically a window to the web, and more platforms are now web-based, and I think that's great, because it means whatever device you're on, you can access the same thing. So, for example, the platform that we're delivering this stream through is web-based, and it's an alternative to some platforms that would traditionally be a Windows or Mac platform. More and more things that are quite capable of running within the browser. And nowadays, whenever we look at software, even though for our teaching staff we do have Windows devices, we do look for web-based platforms, because it's just worrying for me that if we invest in Windows and then we change our mind, then we have to change all of our platforms, rather than just actually say, well, it doesn't matter what platform, what device we're running things on, we can run it on we can run the technology. So our assessment tools and things like that are all based on through the cloud.
I think it's a really good ethos to adopt that. It should be as easy as possible for teachers, especially when you're building that common language of learning across the school. I think quite often how things can go wrong is when you overcomplicate something. I know that something Mark, our guest later on, always preaches about is keep it simple. I'll just do one or two little shout outs, Ben, if that's all right, before we get into sharing. So thank you, Mark Anderson. He completely agrees with you. They give such great functionality, along with flipping them into tablet mode. So they're great. Thanks for tuning in, Mark Ryan, as well. I'd like to think this, but thanks thanks for the vote of confidence. And one final thing then we'll bring in is that Mark saying, bring back chalk and talk, and I think that aligns really with what you're saying there, Ben, which is, do simple things really well, because that's often what the most impactful thing is. It's the day-to-day, it's the bread and butter, isn't it? So without further ado,
we definitely moved our dialogue with teachers from what app can I use to I want to achieve this, how would you suggest I do that? There was this app frenzy sort of maybe 6-7 years ago when everyone just wanted, and schools certainly they had iPad programs, the people would be downloading like 150 apps to their like school-wide iPad thing, and it was app. And now it's more about what am I going to achieve rather than this app frenzy or website frenzy.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there. It's nice to see that sort of calm down a little bit. However, maybe in light of recent months, that might have taken off a little bit in certain schools. Should we delve then into your top tips?
Yeah. So I think the first thing I really wanted to say, like the thing that I use most, the piece of technology, part of the Google Suite that I use most is Google Sheets. And I know that there'll be people out there rolling their eyes like, oh, here we go, spreadsheet nerd. And yeah, generally I am a spreadsheet nerd, but it is such a powerful tool, and there's so many things that we use it for that make it essential to the day-to-day operations of our school. There are some things that I know people will say, well, you can do that in Excel or you can do it in Numbers, and that's fine. Again, like I'm not necessarily promoting Google as a platform. We use it, we get great benefit from the features we use. Other platforms do similar. So one of the apps that we use interconnected with Google Sheets is an app called Autocrat, which is a mail merge setup. So if I talk you through a use case scenario that we have, and you can see how that sort of fits in for us. So we have Google Forms, which links to a back end of a live spreadsheet in Google Sheets. So for example, we set up a Google form that is a lesson observation form or a learning walk form. So if you're in a classroom in Victory Heights and you see some teaching, you can pull up our observation form on a Google form, and it's all mobile formatted as Google Forms is now. You can choose the teacher's name. Teacher's name is also pulled in dynamically from a list using an app or an extension called Form Ranger. And then from that, you choose a name and you select certain of the objectives or the dispositions, I suppose, that you've seen in the lesson. The back end of that, what we've managed to build in then is that without you having to type in your name, so it automatically picks up your email address, and then we built in some lookups and things like that. So the sheet works out what your full name is. It also shortens your name. It then composes an email to the teacher, and it includes a PDF with a nicely formatted version of their feedback that they get almost instantly. That button that says submit is pressed. So that's then stored on our Google Drive, and then people can access that whenever they want to check their feedback. So that is an amazing tool for us. We also use Autocrat for our parent reports. So we use a system called Insight, which is a data assessment tool, which is primary based, and we can get some really great information out of there. And they do have their own report system built into that, but we like the report structures that we developed over the last 8 years. And Insight hasn't always been consistently with us. We moved through from a tool called Target Tracker to Classroom Monitor, and now we're with Insight. Yet we want to maintain the look and feel of the reports that we've used. So we actually decided to build a workflow where we pull information in a CSV format from our tracking software, and then we can format it using Google Sheets, and then using Autocrat, we mail merge it into individual documents that then can be shared with the parents. And that ability to do that very quickly, and to then also use the features of a spreadsheet as well to manipulate some of the data as well, sort of almost live, means that teachers at our school don't have to spend very much time at all with reports, and we can pull that all off information that they're already inserting into the system for assessment purposes. In terms of the management for us, we can keep that consistency. If we did decide, and we're not at that point, but if we did decide in the future that we wanted to change our assessment system and we wanted to move to another platform, our reporting module that we've built that pulls information from an assessment platform, as long as that assessment platform could give us information in a CSV or an Excel or even a Google Sheets format, we could then manipulate it into our report format. So then that gives us the freedom not to be stuck into a package and have to sort of blindly go with it forever, because it sort of so much else rests upon it. And so that for me, the Google Sheets Kung Fu, basically learning how to be a master at Google Sheets, is my top tip. And there's so many really cool things you can do with it. Like there's Google Query, which is built into it, which is a very SQL-like language where you can sort of query large data sets and pull the information. And we do all sorts of cool things with like Pupil 360 reports, where we pull information from different data sets. And yeah, that is such a powerful tool. And if you can learn how to use that, you're a god amongst men in schools, because there's not that many people that are sort of spreadsheet savvy. And if you are a Google school and you can do that with Google Sheets, honestly, you can rule the world. There you go.
Have you got a case example for Autocrat that you could show us?
What, you want me to share a version of what it does?
Yeah, is that possible?
I'm not sure I can do it without revealing any sort of information that I'm not really allowed to share with you, unfortunately, because it won't be redacted. But maybe what I can do is follow up this, and I'll maybe tweet some examples that I have redacted. So if you follow me, or I'm sure you'll be able to retweet it as well, some examples of the sort of things that we produce. We do loads of things in Google Sheets, even that we don't actually merge into documents, that we have almost like live dashboards. The sort of thing that perhaps you could do in Power BI. We sort of build our own live dashboards of data, things like that. We have inclusion tracking. We have actually our safeguarding and child protection system. We built that again based around like Google Forms, and we have different versions of the documents using. There's a feature where you can import from different spreadsheets. It's called import range, and you can pull live information from different Google Sheets, and we can then give different people in the school different viewpoints. So like our designated safeguarding lead can see all of the information, whereas our safeguarding team have got a restricted view and they can't see children's names, for example. And we do all that, pulling live data. And so we save ourselves a lot as an organization in terms of investing in packages off the shelf. But we've also got the ability, we're very much bespoke in what we use. It really does fit our needs.
In terms then of sort of other cloud-based solutions, not necessarily for on the staff end, but that are super useful on the staff end. Are there any that you use on the student end? I know there's one that we sort of talked about in the build up to the show that
so sort of the one I really love at the moment is called Mentimeter. And it's a presentation. It's an interactive presentation software. So it looks outwardly very much like PowerPoint or Google Slides or something like that. But what it lets you do is you can input some interactivity into your slides. So you can put questions in there. And all these questions can be viewed in different ways. They can be like on a scale basis. They can be a survey. You can have there's one where you can put a word cloud together. So you can make a presentation and you say, type your words of what this makes you feel, and then live the children can connect to the site, and it gives a link at the top, type in their words, and then live on screen these things are changing. So it's a bit like if you've been at a conference and you've got like a Twitter wall and that interactivity, that's really great. And we use it both with the children, almost like as a back channel in some of the lessons. We also do that in staff meetings, or we did when we had more conventional staff meetings. Things have changed a little bit now, but so Mentimeter is definitely a tool that I'd recommend. And obviously, it isn't specific to Google Schools. One of the things that does benefit us with being a Google School is the sign-on with Google, the single sign-on across like a whole range of platforms. It's frustrating when you get to a platform and they haven't got a sign-on with Google button, and you have to get the children to remember IDs and things like that. But that's so useful. So Seesaw, which we use a lot of, that's sign-on with Google, and we've got a very consistent naming policy for all of our children from FS1. They've got their own school email address, and having that consistency and an email address was really beneficial for us during the lockdown. So we could switch to Seesaw. All the children could log in to Seesaw. We didn't have to start generating QR codes or anything like that. They just had a consistent login that will stay with them throughout their time with us.
I think that's one of the key things, isn't it? And going back to that kind of idea of a common language of learning, you want to make it as easy as possible for the students as well as for the teachers. How easy is it could you demo Mentimeter? Is that something that you could show us, just to show how easy it is to just quickly create one? Because I
could share that.
Many of our watchers don't use it, and it's an awesome tool. It's so useful.
Yeah, so have you, can you share my, I'll share my screen with you, share my tab. Okay, so yeah, this is Mentimeter. So it looks very similar to like any like Google Slides or PowerPoint or something like that. You can add slides, and then over here you've got these different question types that you can add. So you can have like a word cloud that I've included, a multiple choice, open-ended questions, which is kind of like that tweet wall that I talked about. You have scales, rankings. You can have questions and answers and things like that. You can also do all of the things like including videos and text and images and quotes and things like that. And it's just great. And if I show you on the present mode, at the top here, it tells us the children what they need to do, and then they just type in the code. There's no sign on or anything like that required. You can see down at the bottom how many people are connected with it, and then that updates live. And so that's just an amazing tool. Now, we use it on the free version. You do get some benefits from having a paid for version. For us, those benefits probably it is quite expensive actually in the paid version, and we get a lot of use out of just the standard. There we go. Someone's obviously connecting it. Thanks. Awesome. Yeah, I do really recommend Mentimeter. Give it a go. I think you'll grow to love it. And I think, Ollie, you said you used it before. It's a really great tool.
I think it's one of those things that's so versatile, and to be able to survey in the sort of rawest sense of the word live, either staff or students right in front of you, and just pick apart what they're thinking, whether it's by a word cloud or some sort of multiple choice question or an open-ended question. It's such a useful tool to just be able to delve a little bit deeper into whatever it is you want to know more about. And the fact that it's free and you can embed it across multiple platforms, it's
super simple to use as well. Like there's very low learning curve to it. It's just anyone can pick it up and go with it. So I definitely think that's a great tool.
I'm just going to remove that. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Any other top tips?
I think, one thing I would say is that if you're a school that's not yet with a platform, so there are schools that have they've got their digital strategy maybe not as advanced as some other schools, and they've got a piecemeal approach. Maybe during lockdown they started to think more about, right, well, we need to really tighten up and we need to go down one route or the other. Now, for me, like I've said multiple times, the choice of platform, they all offer very similar things. We chose Google at a time because it did what we wanted. If I had to make my decision again, I probably would go that way, but that's not to say that there wouldn't be strong pulls from whether I went as an Apple school and went the iPad route or went through Microsoft. There are certainly things that I am jealous of that other platforms do, but then again as well, I think people who use other platforms will look at certain things in the Google suite and say, we would like it perhaps to be as simple as that. One thing I hear a lot is that people love the simplicity of the Google suite as opposed to Microsoft, which certainly when you start looking at things like SharePoint, starts to make it much more complex. We manage our school with a very small group of people who are the technicians. We don't have a SharePoint, we don't need a SharePoint developer. We don't have significant amounts of people invested in looking after our Google Suite implementation. So it is easy to implement. The one thing then, the strategy, you need to look at your strategy. If you want to become a Google school, you need to look at things like, right, we're going to have student emails, for example. So what we did is we have our staff are at VH Primary. We set up an alternate domain, which is at vhvsapps.com, and that's our children's domain. So that's like a really important thing to do. I don't think you want your children having access to the same domain name for emails as you want your staff. That can cause you some concerns, and having the organizational unit as well. And even just thinking about things before you go, it's easy just to get the Google management console and start clicking buttons and doing things. And like before you know it, you've got yourself into a situation where you need to then start reversing, but it's not as easy as that. So like, how are we going to name each of the students' accounts? What is the thing that changes year upon year? So we have the year that they ever first started coming to school, so not the first year they came to our school, but the first year they joined in FS1, that's the number at the end of their email address, for example. And we just keep it their name, first letter of their surname and a number. And that sounds like logical, and people will be like, well, surely everyone does that. But I've seen schools not do that and do some crazy approaches to emails, and or just have completely numerical emails. And if I'm asking teachers to help children log on to their system, if I can have a system that makes logical sense, and I can say to them, even if you don't know their email address, it's probably just their first name, the first letter of their last name, and the number 16, then it's transparent access for the teachers. They're not having to scramble around trying to get a 5-year-old to log onto a computer with an email address that they don't know. So yeah, just have a strategy. I know in a lot of these things we've spoken about is that having a digital strategy, that's your first point. Don't just jump in 2 feet into something without making some rational decisions first.
Yeah, I think that's really important that you try and know your end goal. Think about how you're going to get there before you just start carving away at whatever it is you're wanting to do. I was trying at that moment in time to type into Google. There's a fantastic set of documents, all to do with school digital strategies, written by our next guest, who I'm about to bring in right now. So he will have it on the tip of his tongue, no doubt. Mr. Mark Anderson, good evening.
Evening, Ollie. How are you? And hi, Ben.
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thank you. Thanks for inviting me onto the show this evening. I've been wanting to be a guest forever.
It's great to have you here. Long time no see.
Thank you very much.
Whilst I think it's an appropriate time whilst Ben's talking about the importance of digital strategies, Mark, could you just share with everyone the website that I can't think of off the top of my head, but I know that you'll be able to reel it off?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking for some advice around school digital strategy, obviously I am available to work with schools and all that sort of stuff. So I'm very happy to have those sorts of conversations with anyone who's willing to listen to me. But if you're looking for some tips and advice, if you go to schooldigitalstrategy.com, as you can see on the screen here, you can download the free guide that I wrote with Al Kingsley, which you can download, and it's full of great, advice and tips. it sort of digs deep into every sort of key stakeholder area in the school, from your finance team, for your SBM, your school business manager, to leadership, to things for your teachers, things for your students, things around data privacy, all that sort of stuff. And it's also jam-packed full of case studies of schools that have got it right, with certain aspects there and link into those different topical areas. So completely free, and you can just download it from that URL that I gave you, schooldigitalstrategy.com. And actually, Ollie, Al and I have just recently completed creating an online course that goes with this particular booklet, so with this little guide. So I say booklet, it's like 40 or so pages long, so it's not One Piece, but certainly not a Michelin book either. So yeah, plenty of stuff in there, and the feedback we've had from people is great, because the thing is, some people work with schools and they'll go there with their here's my plan to success, but actually, as you both know, everything in every school is always contextual. And so what we tried really hard to do with the guide was not to tell you what to do, but to discuss the areas and things you should be thinking about. So if we think about the governors and trustees section, it's not saying what governors should be doing, it's giving governors pertinent questions to ask of leadership to help steer them down the right path. It's that sort of approach that gives people the frameworks and the things they should be considering when they're starting to map out what they should or would like to be doing with technology across their particular school organisation. So yeah, that was that. Thanks for allowing me to share that, Ollie. Thank you.
That's all right. Thank you very much. It's a fantastic document.
Thank you. My pleasure.
But we're here to talk Google, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, so I wanted to share a few things with you tonight around Google. It was lovely to hear Ben talking about Autocrat. Autocrat is something that can be used in many different ways. I used it for bank statements, for example, years ago, for sort of reports from my own classroom and things. It's really, really powerful, really, really useful. And I'm a huge advocate for Mentimeter as well. Again, the reason why I love Mentimeter so much is because it's got, and we often see this with the best edtech, and actually this is one of the reasons why I think Google's such a compelling offer as well, and you alluded to it in what you were sharing, Ben, as well, because often the best uses aren't like the super duper mega hard stuff that takes you 15,000 steps to produce something wow. It's actually those little things that you can do day in, day out. You were talking about the sort of keep it simple and implementation being small steps. If you think about it in a sort of marginal gains kind of a world where you aggregate those small wins together, pretty soon when you bring all those things together, you're actually starting to make quite a big difference. And so that leads me quite nicely, because Mentimeter really falls into that sort of place, doesn't it, Ben? Because it's so easy to get the things set up, so easy to share, so quick to get that feedback from your students while they're filling them in. Good for staff surveys and things as well, for that sort of automatic feedback. I regularly use it with groups that I work with. I remember using it recently with the University of Worcester students, and I was able to, without training the students in how to use it, within 2 minutes I had 300 responses and was able to sort of dig down into all that stuff. So I'm really looking for those sort of things. But that leads me into my first example that I'd like to share with you this evening, which is a tool I came across quite a few months ago now, but I've got back into it again a bit recently, chatting with another Google certified friend of mine, John Neal, who's been sort of championing it quite a bit on social media. And again, it's one of those tools, I mentioned it on the show last week in a little sort of warm-up for tonight, but it's one of those tools that is so super simple to use, but massively scalable in terms of what you can do with it and the impacts it can have and the efficiencies it can bring and the improvements to work-life balance it can bring, and making things more accessible for your learners in the classroom and things as well. And the tool, excuse me, the tool I'd like to share with you first of all this evening is one called Moat. Now, it's not like you'd find around a castle. It's more like Moat as in Mote, M-O-T-E. And if you're looking to find out more about it, just go to justmoat.com, and there's loads of information on Moat through that URL. But I often find the best way to explain things is through a demonstration. So what I'll do is I will stop sharing my screen and I'll re-share it again. And I'll go to my full screen, and I won't be able to see you anymore, Ollie. So if you could just tell me if you can see my Learn Live UE onboarding sheet here.
I can, yeah.
Happy days. So Mote is a tool that enables you to leave really quickly a little audio note on anything that you're using in a Google ecosystem. So whether you're on Google Slides like this, or you're using Google Sheets, Ben's favorite, or if you're using something like Google Docs, it's super easy to leave some audio feedback. So the way that you do it is to open up the comment box. I've already highlighted the word under a rock here ready, so we can see the little comment option here on the right-hand side. Now, if I wanted to leave some feedback for my learner, traditionally what I would do is I would click on the plus button and I'd start typing my feedback. And that's great, but it's not very contextual, other than the fact it's written where it says under a rock just there. But where Mote really does come into its own is through a few of the options which are sort of tied into it, and I've turned a few of them on already. But the key thing that I think really sort of sets Mote above everything else is the fact that you can use your voice to record feedback. Okay, so I wanted to put a bit of feedback on this here. And what I can do, rather than type it into this space here, I can just click the little Mote icon here on the right-hand side. Now, you will not see what it says there. That is far too tiny. Even with my glasses on, I show my age there. With my glasses on, I'm struggling to read that here. But it does say click to record or hold for Notebook. Now, I'm just going to click onto it. And what I can do is I can just leave some audio feedback. Could you consider using a word other than months in this paragraph, because you've used it 15 times? Thank you. I just tap on done and it says thinking. And I've turned on a few things inside Mote here. So what I've turned on is not just the fact that I can record my voice. I've also turned on live transcription as well. And I've also turned on what's called STEM mode, and I'll explain STEM mode in just a second as well. But if I hit the word comment here, not only will it have done the audio bits, if I click on the little play button here, it will play my feedback so the student can listen to it. Could you consider using a word other than months in this paragraph, because you've used it 15 times? Thank you. Now, you can see there's an error there with the 15x. That's because I've got STEM mode turned on and it's picking up the numbers and things that I put in here. Let me just try another example here using a STEM mode. H2O. Thinking, there we go, go to comment, and it will just work it out, and it will put in, it does a transcript live, and there you go, it's put straight in that chemical equation there, and it's also got the audio there too. So look, I'm not going to demonstrate that in Sheets and in Slides. It is just as simple as you've seen it already. So you just highlight the thing that you want to put some feedback onto, go to Tools, go to put the comment in, same thing inside your Google Sheets setup there. Yeah, for me, Mote is a super useful tool, because what it does, I can just find you again, Ollie, where have you gone to? Let's just flick into here. That's probably the quickest way to come back to you. There we go. And I'll just remove that for a second before I come back with the next little bit. But yeah, for me, I'm a huge fan of Mote for a number of reasons. One, it's easy, right? So anything that makes things easy for teachers, for me, is always going to be a win. But secondly, it reminds me of something that I did years ago, and it wasn't even as easy as this. But I remember an A-level computing student I had who was dyslexic, and they'd submitted their first draft of their A-level computing project, and it was like 30 sides of A4. I could have gone through that with a red pen and written loads of feedback in there and done all these different things and so forth and so on. But not only would that have taken me a long time to do, it actually wouldn't have been that accessible for that particular student. So for me, I think Mote is super useful for teachers. It can save an awful lot of time because you can use your voice, and it also makes your feedback significantly more accessible for your learners. And I think that's great from EYFS right through to post-16 into year 13, because with particularly young children, they're still getting their language acquisition skills. They might recognize sort of keywords and phrases. I think the other thing which is really lovely about it is the fact that they can actually hear your voice. One of the things I've loved about the sort of way in which Microsoft have developed their tools over the last 12 months have been how they've been really listening to educators and bringing in updates that facilitate loads of really brilliant things, around things like immersive reader and Microsoft Stream, live transcription in Teams, all these different things. And I think this sort of cuts away. I mean, you were talking before, Ben, about some of the things that you can do on other platforms that you can't do in Google. Well, I was talking with another developer recently, actually, about something coming into Google soon, which isn't currently available, and that's the ability to annotate slides in Google Slides. That's something that I know lots of Google schools wish they could have that ability to sort of just write and annotate things on the screen. And so lots of these tools are starting to come through into the different ecosystems, which I think are going to really, really help those schools that have invested heavily into these particular tools. And Mote is one of those that I highly rate and highly rank. So please do check it out, justmote.com. Get yourself signed up. You can have a little play around for free. They have got a premium option. I'm lucky to have the premium option on mine, so you can't do everything that I've showed you today for free, but you do get a bit of time to leave some feedback, and you can do it multiple times throughout a document. And I think it's really, really compelling and a great offer to support how you sort of use tools in schools. So that's my first one. My second one, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again in a second, but if you could just do that for me, Ollie, while I just bring myself back onto the right screen. There we go. Can you just bring my screen share back up again, please, Ollie?
Yeah, you there?
Brill, cool. So what I want to do, and this is one thing I'm not very good at, actually, but what I want to do is I want to talk about this area up here in the top right-hand corner. Okay, because one of the things that really helps me to be more productive using Google tools is the Chrome extensions that you can have. But the thing is, if you've got loads and loads of Chrome extensions, one of the problems is you haven't got very much space here. And if it gets filled up, where do you find them afterwards? They can be quite difficult to manage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share, just towards the end of my presentation here, a few of the Chrome extensions I use to help me do what I do, and some tools that are really popular in schools to support with lots of different activities as well. So the first one I want to share with you today is this one here called Extensity. Now, Extensity is really, really useful because what you can do really easily is you can just press onto your Extensity option here, and it shows you all of the different Chrome extensions that you've got installed. And as you can see, I've got a fair amount installed. But I don't want them all being displayed at the top here. So what Extensity does is it enables you to turn on and off. So now I use Buffer a lot. Buffer is a tool I use for scheduling my tweets and other social media. So that's sitting just here at the moment on here. But if it's something I don't use regularly, what I can do is I can just click onto it here, and it removes it from my bar up here, and I can remove the Cisco WebEx extension. I don't use that very often. I don't use I don't use screencastify very much anymore. I tend to use Loom. So having this little tool here, Extensity, really helps me to manage all of my Chrome extensions and keeps my bar area up here far more sort of on point, so that the tools that I regularly use are there all of the time. Whilst we're talking about that sort of thing as well, I want to share with you one of my favorite shortcuts for Chrome, and that is Control, Shift, and B. When you've got as many bookmarks as I've got at the top here, and particularly when you're presenting, okay, I don't want everyone to see that I've got 2 Amazon links here. I've got one for Sky News. I've got my Netflix. I've got my Now TV, Adobe Spark, iPlayer, all the rest of it. But I don't want people seeing all of that stuff. So if I'm presenting, what I'll do is I'll just press Control, Shift, and B, and boom. And you repeat that, Control, Shift, and B, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards. It turns it on and off, on and off, on and off. So that's something that I find really useful and links into that Extensity Chrome extension that I shared with you a moment ago, because it's about keeping these things nice and tidy. Now, so people often ask me as well, Mark, how is it that you've got all of these looking like this? Now, the thing is, I don't need to read the word Adobe Spark to know that that is Adobe Spark just here, because I can recognize the Spark logo. If I go over here, this one here is YouTube, there's Twitter, I can go to here, there's Google Sheets. That there is even the icon for my son's school, okay? So how do I get it so it looks so nice and tidy like that? Well, it's really, really easy to do. Okay, all you have to do is when you and I've had a good mentor me to here for a second. Okay, when you favorite, when you sort of save a website, when you bookmark the tab, simply go to the star option there, and it gives you your options. Okay, simply remove everything in the name section, and what it will do, and let's make sure it goes straight to my bookmarks bar. You remove all of that, and what it will do is it will just leave it with the icon for that particular site. So when I hit done, that will then go on. I'm not going to do it because I've already got Mentimeter on there, but that's how you add that in, and it's super easy, and it means that you can fit far more into your bookmarks bar than you otherwise would. So that's extensity. And then there's the way in which you can get more, sort of squeeze more space into the very limited bit of sort of visual real estate that you've got on your bookmarks bar. And then the Control Shift and B option to help you. My absolute favorite shortcut for Chrome, though, and how many times, Ollie, have you done this? You've started working on something, you've made something, and then you go up here and you click on the X here and you close it by mistake, and you're like, oh, flipping heck, I've got to go back, and I've got to. So you then go to the new tab, you'll type in sheet, you're going to find it again. No. This tip I'm going to give you now, Ollie, okay, is one which works not just in Chrome. It works in Microsoft Edge. It works in Safari. It works in Firefox. All you got to do is press Control, Shift, and T. And if you're a Mac user, it's Command, Shift, and T. But you simply press the options Control, Shift, and T, and it brings that tab straight back. It reopens the last tab that you last had open. It's also super useful if you manage to close your entire Chrome browser as well. Because what happens is if you close the entire Chrome browser, and I'm not going to demo this, but if you close the whole lot in one go by mistake, simply press the Control, Shift, and T option again, and it'll bring all of them back in one go. Now that, Ollie, is not only really, really useful. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment and come back to you again. That's not only really useful for you when you're doing things yourself, but I've also found that really useful. You know, when you get like a student and your teacher radar has peaked a bit, you know they're not doing what they should be doing. You know they're watching something, they're reading a review about the latest Fortnite Go Battle League or whatever it is, right? And when you walk round to them, as if by magic, the thing they were on that you didn't know they were using has disappeared. Well, this is one of your teacher superpowers now. Just simply, excuse me, can I just get to your keyboard for a second? Obviously, you wouldn't want to get too close, socially distancing, and all those different things, right? Can you just move yourself away for a second, and you just quickly Control Shift and T, and do it quickly, like abracadabra, or something like that, and away you go, and boom, the tab that they closed quickly and thought they got away from and hiding from you, boom, you brought it straight back up again. So you can then have that important conversation with that child as to why they're using that particular tab that they otherwise probably shouldn't have been using. So there's another little thing that I regularly share that's, again, so easy to do, but can be super helpful for teachers in the classroom. Obviously, if you had some software like is available from our sponsor of tonight's episode, Classroom.cloud, then you can see what's on your students' screens all the time. Okay, lovely. But if you haven't got that, things like Control, Shift, and T are a super option for sort of finding out exactly what was going on. And if your experience is the same as mine, 9 times out of 10, your teacher radar will be correct. You will have, when those students are doing those things, they shouldn't necessarily be doing.
Face.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things I wanted to share. How many people time? Got 10 minutes. I was going to do one more, if that's all right with you, Ollie.
Carry on.
Thank you very much, sir. So I'm just going to share my screen again and just jump back into the space over here. I wanted to share, lots of teachers sort of shout about Screencastify. It's a great tool. WeVideo, again, is another fantastic tool for working with videos in Chrome. If you're a Chromebook school using Chrome as your sort of ecosystem, great tools. But I want to share this one here a second, which is Loom. Now you can run, and I'm not signed in, so I'm going to unshare a second while I just sign myself back into Loom for a second. Happy days. Just bringing that back through. Okay, yes, it wants to use my camera. I've updated to Big Sur today on my device, so things are just needing to be just given permission to join me again. So I'm just going to share my screen again, and that should come straight back up for you. And then I'll jump straight back into my sheet here. Now, Loom, like Screencastify, is screen recording software. If you are in education, you get the full premium version of Loom completely for free. But in a world where increasingly you're being asked to create online teaching and learning resources or videos, and you're not a Microsoft school, you're a Google school, there are two main tools on offer to support you doing those sort of things. Lots of people use Screencastify, but as I wanted to share Loom that I've been using pretty much exclusively since the beginning of lockdown. And it's fantastic, is Loom. You simply go onto the Loom option here. You can see automatically that my face has now appeared in the bottom corner over here. I can, if I want to, move it around. I can make myself a bit bigger if I want to, or a bit bigger again, or a bit smaller. Okay, I can move myself around and all these different things. I can hit record from here as well. You can choose where you record and all these things in the top right-hand corner as well, whether it's using your built-in mic or whatever options you've got available to you. But it's super easy, and you just hit the record button. It gives you the opportunity of choosing where you're going to record. So I'm just going to record myself on here, hit share, give me a little countdown. Hi, Mark Anderson here, ICT Evangelist, and so I just want to share with you some top tips of best practice when it comes to thinking about teaching online. The first one I want to share with you is about being visible. Positive relationships have a big impact on learning. We've heard about this many times from the likes of John Hattie, blah, 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 blah. You make your video, okay, and then you simply hit pause if you're finished. You can cancel it if you want to, or you can just hit the tick here to finish the recording. Do that. And then what it does is it uploads it straight to the Loom site. Now that's brilliant for then sharing with whomever, whenever you want to. And you can embed it within things. You can even include a link automatically. It's picked up here, the sheet that I have just been using to sort of create a little presentation on as well. There are loads of really lovely little features inside Loom, and you can obviously you can download the video afterwards as well. You can send it to your Google Drive, and there are loads and loads of fantastic options here within inside Loom. And I would strongly urge you to have a little look around at it, because for me, for creating screen recordings on a Chromebook, it is the absolute cat's whiskers. It can get super easy. You get into that definition of, oh, how do I do it? Oh, that's how you do it. Superb result. It's just so quick and easy. You can, if you want to, alternatively, if you've got access to a device other than a Chromebook, you can install Loom locally. So if you've got a Windows device or an Apple MacBook or other device, or even a Chromebook where you've got a bit of storage on it. My Chromebook's got 32 gig of SSD storage on it, for example. So you can download tools to use on your devices. But again, if you've got the opportunity and the option to use it in the cloud like that, when it's so quick and easy, I don't really know why you want to try and even bother downloading it. But those are my three top little things I wanted to share today. It's super easy. A few little keyboard shortcuts to help make your life a little bit easier. Hiding your bookmark bar and bringing it back. Using an extension like Extensity to manage all of your different Chrome extensions, and then Control Shift and T for that whole, oh my God, what's my work? But then you can bring it back in a heartbeat sort of option, or catch out or catch in, hopefully. Some of your students who you think might be a bit off task. Yeah, I hope you found those little tips helpful. I don't know, have you heard of Moat before, Ben?
I have heard of it. I haven't used it very much, but actually looking at the transcription bit was brilliant. That was amazing on that. I definitely share that, definitely with the teachers tomorrow. It's interesting you said about Loom, because when you were showing Extensity and you had Screencastify and Loom, I was about to say that you're going through the same journey of like the transition with that, because I was a Screencastify guy, and then Loom is better for me. It's a better package, and uploading Screencastify uploads to your Google Drive, which does have some benefits, but Loom just was easier to share thing for me, and I like, and Loom Screencastify also, there was sometimes it failed uploads and things like that. So I really do love Loom. I like how you get an email to see that it's been viewed for the first time. Because sometimes I worry that I make these videos for kids and they never actually ever get seen. So, at least that gives me sort of some satisfaction. Another thing as well, I saw, Mark, in your extensions, Alice Keeler, and I was going to shout out to Alice Keeler because she does on her blog. She's like I said about you need to be like a ninja in terms of Google Sheets. She's a Google Scripts ninja. She does some like amazing things, and I've learned so much through her. And so a big shout out to her because if you're a Google school, you need to follow Alice Keeler on Twitter or on her blog.
Yeah, no, I'd wholeheartedly recommend that as well. I'm lucky to call Alice a friend. She is someone who has taught me so much over the years, and she is an absolute whiz, like you in Google Sheets, but also her scripts work is superb. And what I love about Alice as well is how much she shares for free. So as you'll have seen, it was turned off there, wasn't it? That little that extension that she developed, but yeah, I mean, she shares so much freely. There was a formula that I shared with you back along, Ben, a bit, and we used it, Ollie, ourselves. She taught me how to create a clickable hyperlink in a Google Sheet that would open Twitter and auto populate a tweet.
Yeah,
you know, some of the things she's taught me using Google Sheets is just like mind blowing. And whilst I'm a fan of Microsoft, I'm a fan of numbers as well. But you know, some of the things you can do inside Google Sheets just can't be matched, can they?
No, yeah, it's just the interaction between different live sheets and things like that. It's just great. And we train the kids up as well with it, and as much as they're not sort of definitely at my level. But yeah, it is really easy to use, and I just love it. It's obviously because it runs mainly in JavaScript as well. If you were to put sort of millions and millions of cells into there, you probably would notice it slowed down a bit. And if you're running on like maybe a Chromebook that's an ARM processor, it would slow down a bit. But we've never really encountered any of those problems. So one thing I remembered that I was meant to have mentioned is that basically at the start of lockdown, or not lockdown here, the new ways here, collection of children from school is a bit of an issue. But we have to remain socially distant. Parents are not allowed on site, so we have to quickly come up with a solution to make that work. So we developed a form that the parents access at the school gate. They choose their child's name, and there are a number of children sat in our school hall. They basically have like a live screen, and their name pops up on the screen. The color of the class is all conditional formatted, and they know then that their parents at the gate, and they're walking through to collect them. So like our school at collection time is a bit like McDonald's drive-through. The children literally get to the door, and their mum takes the bag, and off they go. And it's just the ability to be able to do things like that. Like other teachers in school were like, "Oh, where did you get this from? It's amazing. And how long did it take you?" And I was like, "Oh, about 5 minutes, if I'm being honest." But it's just having the know-how how to put something into that, and that just made our life so. I was thinking today, if we didn't have this, we would have still been at the point of asking the parent the kid's name, going and shouting their name, and that just been chaotic. So yeah, having that little bit of knowledge can help you in so many ways beyond what people just think. Oh, profit and loss account, balance sheet, but a spreadsheet can run your whole school.
No, I'll tell you, I'm a huge fan of Google Sheets, like yourself, Ben. Ollie, can I just mention one more thing? Is that all right? I know we're running close to the wire here. I wanted to mention 3 letters, SSO. One of the things which is really lovely about being a school which uses Google is single sign-on. And whilst you can have that in Microsoft schools, available on some tools, the Google API for single sign-on into different tools is far more well established and been running for a much longer time. So one of the tools that I was going to share, which I know both of you are very adept at and knowledgeable of, was quizzes, as an example. But if you're looking for a new tool to use in your school, the reason why I mentioned quizzes is because it's got single sign-on for which means you can just log straight into it and set up an account and all that sort of stuff for free using your school credentials. And so that's another real additional benefit to being a Google school. Just because you're a Google school doesn't mean to say you're limited to using just the Google tools. One of the great things about the Google ecosystem is that you can bring in all these different things. You know, Ben picked up on the Alice Keeler plugin, extension that I had. You can have single sign-on, I believe, with Mentimeter as well, and you certainly can with quizzes. You know, so don't feel like you are in a Google school, you're thinking or struggling. What tools can I use? Don't think you're limited. There are loads of great tools. Google Keep could have taken up most of this session this evening, for example. Google Keep is massive, really, really useful tool to use. But just look out for that single sign-on option when you're looking for a tool to use to support you. Not saying that Google Forms isn't great for doing sort of Q&A and quizzing within your class. It absolutely is. But quizzes is great for Google Schools for a number of reasons, not just because a single sign-on, it linked to the Google Classroom. It can update your mark sheet, all those different things. So when a student completes a quiz in Quizzes and you send it to them through Classroom, through the link you've got in Quizzes to your Google Classroom, it will automatically update your mark book for you based on the results they get, all those sort of things. There's loads and loads of wins, but the key really is just to keep your eye out and look for that single sign-on option. Because again, it helps keep everything under one roof, and the additional benefit is you haven't got to then remember lots of different email addresses or logins or passwords to get into all these 101 different tools that you're trying to use to support your job. Because otherwise, you end up being like my mum. You have a little notebook with like 15,000 different logins and things. Yeah, you just keep you know me, I like to keep things nice and simple, don't I? So yeah, that's me. Ideas done. I'll shut up now.
I'll bring in this little comment. Thanks for tuning in, Mataza. Loom is a lifesaver. There we go. So recognised there as also being an awesome tool. I was going to ask you both actually one question, but before we went, but you've already given Alice a shout out. Is there anyone else that both of you would like to mention in the world of Google that people should follow online?
Do you want to go first, Ben?
No, I'm trying to think. Alice would have been my answer. I can't think of anyone off the top of my head.
I'll do 5 people, if that's all right. to make up for Ben. No, and the first one is the gentleman I mentioned before, John Neal. Jon, surname Neale. He's J Neal UK on Twitter. And what he doesn't know, I mean, he's an ADE as well as being Google certified trainer, mentor, innovator, etc., etc. But he's a great guy. He's always sharing really good stuff on social media about using Google tools in education. And if BET was happening in January, he'd be probably standing on the Google stand like he was last year. So he's a great follow. Rachel Kotup as well, Tech Miss C on Twitter is a big shout out as well. She what she doesn't know about using Google tools in education isn't worth knowing. And I will do a shout out for 2 sort of unsung heroes as well, because we often relatively often hear loads about great teachers or school leaders in input areas, but I want to do a shout out for 2 people who are network managers. The first person I want to do a shout out for is Abid Patel. He's actually the Google Educator Group lead for the UK. His Twitter handle is Abid Patel, and he's always sharing great stuff about management for Google schools and hints and tips in using Google stuff. And he's a great follow, and he's got a great Google Innovator project as well that he's working on. I also want to do a shout out for Peter Horner. He's the network manager for a big college here in the UK as well. His Twitter handle is Peter G Horner, spelled like corner but with a H. If you can't sort of pick that out from my Southwest England West Country accent, Peter G Horner again, he is always regularly sharing awesome stuff around all things Google. And again, he's got a great innovative project that he's working on as part of his via 20 stuff. And again, all great follows and all lovely people. And the hallmark of the best educators on Twitter, in that you ask them a question and do you know what they answer? And they get back to you. But they also retweet you. So not only do you get great responses from them, their PLN will pile on and give you great hints and tips as well. So those would be some of my sort of top recommendations. Loads more. Ranga Trainer. There are so many great people sharing things. Ranga Trainer's product thing he's doing is his innovative project is a thing called My EdTech Buddy. And if you find My EdTech Buddy on Twitter, it's a little EdTech startup he started actually, and tied in with that are loads of bespoke mini courses. I say bespoke because the videos that he's made to teach you how to do different things are already pre-populated. The bespoke part of it is you can map your own learning journey through there, and I think it's all available for free at the moment. So again, check out My EdTech Buddy. It might be good for some of your colleagues in school, Ben, for their sort of PD. And it's all linked to ideas and things that you can do with Google Tools in the classroom and how to do them. So loads of great ideas and shares from him. I'm doing that thing though, Ollie, that we hate it when guests do. They keep talking.
They're on and on and on and on and on.
The show rolls well past its hour deadline. Should we do a shout out before we disappear, Ollie? Should we do one final little shout out for the 7th of December?
Yeah, what I thought I'd just go through is, of course, next week, as I previously mentioned, there will be no Monday night show because we are, as mentioned, hosting a session at the Guess EdTech Virtual Summit. Okay, the week after, the 30th of November, we have a show titled Recharge the Right Way over Spring break. Can't get my words out. We've got 3 guests coming on the show there. We've got Octavia Torian, who presented at our conference a couple of weeks back. We've got Cass Germain, the wellbeing teacher from Dubai, and Nina Jackson. And then the week after that, the 7th of December, we have quiz nights. Mark, would you like to talk more about the quiz night?
Yeah, I'm really excited for quiz night. I did a similar thing at the end of the school academic year on the other show that I host, UK Edu Stories, and it was great. It was loads of fun, loads of teachers coming in, getting involved, and we sorted out a few prizes for people who took part in the quiz. We ran it live and had great engagement, a great bit of fun just before the summer break. And goodness knows, we all needed a nice bit of fun and a bit of a giggle at the end of the school year. Well, we thought we'd do the same thing for Learn Live UAE. And so the reveal I've got for you this evening, and this is something you want to share with your colleagues as well, Ben, and we've got some prizes already sort of sorted for the quiz. And so I'm going to announce the first sort of series of prizes that are going to be available to some of the winners from the Learn Live UAE quiz night on the 7th of December. We've been able to secure 3 free annual subscriptions to Seesaw Plus for a year. So that's one of the prizes, along with some t-shirts as well. They'll get a Seesaw t-shirt alongside that subscription to Seesaw Plus for the year. And so we've got a bunch more prizes sorted as well. We'll reveal more as we get closer to the date. But watch out on mine and Ollie's Twitter account to sort of get the full lowdown, find out how you can get involved. It's not going to be hard. You simply turn up, we'll run the quiz, and you can answer the questions within the platform, and we'll compare the quiz as it sort of runs through the course of the evening. But more on that as we get closer to that date. I think now it's time for me to just
stop. Alas. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you very much to both of our guests this evening, Ben Rothwell and Mark Anderson. See you next week.